hello and a very special welcome back to another episode of Straight Talk. My name is Nicki Shields and I'm absolutely delighted to say that this episode is all about the best of British. Yes, we're getting excited because it's not long to go before the double header in London. The London E-Prix returns since season 2. We have missed it and we cannot wait for it to get underway. But the best of British, I should probably start to our two British drivers at the Mahindra Racing team, Alexander Sims and Alex Lynn. Guys, good to see you both here in Mexico in Puebla. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
All good, thanks. Yes.
All good. Great. Well, we're talking Britishness.
We are.
And obviously, you guys have had a really long and exciting career through the ranks of karting and into single seaters and GT racing. But let's kind of start at the beginning. What were your inspirations when it comes to British racing? Who are the drivers that you kind of aspired to be, and some of the tracks that you aspired to race at?
Well, I would say my first inspiration wasn't British, it was Michael Schumacher. But as I've gotten older, I've definitely come to have a real big appreciation for like Sterling Moss, Jim Clark. Like for example, Jim Clark's a bit of a style hero of mine. I think he's pretty cool. Like, always dressed cool, enjoyed his hairstyle. No, but in all seriousness, I've grown to appreciate the history of our nation's racing drivers as I've grown up and gotten older. I don't know about you, but
I bit boring in that sense. Actually, I never really had any major inspirations. When I was growing up.
You're so honest in these podcasts.
Yeah, I don't really toe the line very well, do I? But to be fair, the one guy that I've looked up to probably over the last 10 years or so, since my single-seater season started in Formula Renault, I was teammates with Henry Surtees, and I got fairly close to John actually, and drove a load of his old historic cars at Surtees events, and yeah, that was a real genuinely nice moment where I pinched myself as I got to know John, and he went through some of his old stories, and you understand really the challenges that they faced back in the day, and I compared them to the rather trivial moments that I felt that I was facing in my career. It was really, really nice to have known him and to experience some of his things.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you look back at how racing has changed. I mean, back then, obviously, these guys were absolute heroes. It was really quite treacherous going out in those race cars. The health and safety just was nowhere near what it's like today. But having said all of that, would you prefer to have raced in the era of John Surtees, or are you happy to be racing with a modern day car?
Well, I think I'd prefer to be racing here now. One story always stands out in my memory, speaking to John, where he said that he was racing at Spa in the wet, and he purposefully let a driver pass so that he could follow in their wheel tracks, having dispersed the water on the track, purely from a safety point of view, to be able to complete the race. I think the risk of being seriously injured or even dying back then was a genuine thought that I'm very glad that I don't have that too much nowadays. And to be able to be in such a pioneering moment here in Formula E is a real privilege that I'm happy about.
Yeah, it is a very, very exciting time to be in motorsport, I'm sure. Now, for those of you that are actually watching this podcast on our YouTube channel, you might have noticed that Alex has done a quick change. So we're in Puebla in Mexico. The heat is pretty hot. We've got the sun beating down on us. It's about 25 degrees, and he just nipped off to put his shorts on. So there you go. That is why
black jeans weren't the option of choice.
The beauty of television. He's switched from his jeans to his little black shorts. But let's go back to talking about British racing, the karting scene. Did you guys ever race against each other?
Not each other, no.
We didn't, did we? No.
You never came into contact?
No, Simsy was the generation above me.
I didn't like to say anything. But...
No, I mean only by a couple of years, but that's...
But that makes a big difference, doesn't it,
absolutely.
In karting?
The
you're really only...
the age.
Exactly.
Ages are only pretty much 2-3 years per category, so yes. Yeah, I'm not that old, but I'm literally his dad. Or could be.
You could be with some of the others in the pit lane, maybe.
Unfortunately, yes, that is
And I sadly could be their mother as well. Yeah. We're getting a bit too young for my liking. So you didn't compete together in the karting world, but how was it when you were racing in karting? Again, does that encourage you to aspire to continue racing? What was the importance that you learned during your karting years?
Well, I mean, Simsy was a British champion, European champion in karting?
No, never. No, I just stayed on a good level in national series.
I mean, you're a British champ.
Yes, yeah, a few times.
Yeah, exactly. No,
probably worth mentioning that one.
No, I didn't win a raffle in karting.
Okay.
And went into cars and everything changed actually. But yeah, it was. I think the thing is in karting is, I mean, like all racing, it has got a lot to do with your equipment, and especially when you're younger, you see a lot actually. Like when you're younger, the rate of growth that young kids they have anyway. Like no matter how old they are, like some kids are bigger, more mature. They develop faster, and as everyone gets older, it starts to merge a bit more into one. I don't know if you agree.
So when did you become really tall? What age was that?
Like in my last 2 years of karting, I became really tall, which was, I guess, a bit of a disadvantage. I remember Nick de Vries when he was karting. We used to kart against each other. I mean, my God, he was,
quick.
Well, quick, but also very, very, very small. And at that point, it was a real advantage.
Yeah. And would you, Alex, Alexander, you've got kids. Would you encourage them to go into karting?
From a purely selfish point of view right now, the answer would be no. Just because I know how much time and effort it took for me to dedicate myself to karting.
And is that, when you say you dedicating, is that you and your parents and your family? Do they have to give up a lot to support you?
My dad came to some of the races. I generally went around with another man called Rob Goff, who basically was my mentor, my guardian as such, and came to all the races with me, and gave up a huge amount of his life to allow me to develop. I worked with him from pretty much since I started when I was 10 years old through to Formula Renault when I was 20 years old. So yeah, a good 10-year span of pretty much every weekend he came with me, which allowed me to learn and to do all the racing that I did. But yeah, karting's pretty intense actually. There were some years when I'd probably do 30 races in a year at different tracks, whether it be club races or national or European level championships.
And this is all while you're at school as well, of course. So you're kind of juggling your school work as well at the same time. I mean, that must become a bit of a challenge. How did you do in your exams?
It was tough. Up to GCSE level, it was kind of okay. I was fortunate to be able to balance the days off with still learning enough at school to get sensible GCSEs, but then A-levels took a nosedive big time. I remember having the discussion with my parents about the idea of not going to do A-levels and just doing racing full time. And they were like, no, you need to do your A-levels, but honestly in hindsight, I was there 2-3 days a week, every week.
Oh my God, wow,
and
okay, so you really missed out.
Amount of schooling and with no time to actually catch up, because obviously all the time that I'm away, I'm racing, and then I get back on Monday morning and I can't suddenly do twice the amount of work. Yeah.
Didn't happen. Was that the same for you, Alex?
It was exactly the same. I didn't take any GCSEs.
No GCSEs?
I pretty much left school at the age of 15.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Well, I mean, it came to the point where I was a bit of a naughty child at school anyway. So again,
that continued.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. And you start doing international karting at a young age, which we both did. And then at a certain point, you're never there.
Yeah.
And I was the kind of child who, if you gave me any excuse not to do my homework, I would absolutely take it. And and then at some point, there is a serious side to it where I think my parents took the decision, well, he's not listening anyway, and so he's not going to get the grades, so you may as well go all in on the racing and hope that he makes it. And I'm very lucky that I did.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I don't sit there and condone that, because it was a massive gamble. But
But for you, it was the right thing to do, and
Yeah.
it's paid off.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So you basically managed to use karting as an excuse not to do your homework. So would you obviously recommend now to other kids that want to get into racing that they've got to start karting from a young age and really put the time in and the hours in?
I think it's more. No, I wouldn't say that. It's more you need to learn the right lessons, because karting is, it's not, in my opinion, the barometer of talent. It's
Okay,
more
that's interesting.
an indication of how good or bad someone is. But you learn a lot of very valuable lessons as a young man or young girl as adult life, because of course from a very early age we're leaving our parents to go racing around the world. Like I was racing in Japan at the age of 14,
Wow.
to do the Asia Pacific Karting Championship.
And when you do that, who's kind of looking after you at that point? Because, being let loose in Japan at the age of 14.
Well, I went with no one. I went with the team,
Yeah.
which of course my mechanic was a early 20-year-old.
Relatively young,
Yeah.
old to you probably when you were
old to
14,
me.
but
I'm
yeah.
14, he's not my mum or
Still-
dad.
yeah.
So guess what? I'm allowed to do what I want. You're flying around the world and
Wow.
you grow up very fast.
Yeah. Well, you must have to have such a level of maturity, because you could act like an immature 14-year-old, but that's not going to get you the results in Japan on the racetrack.
Exactly. And in the end, like we joke around about not getting any grades, but one thing I realised when I left school was it has to happen. And the only way to make it is to win.
Yeah.
So I haven't got any grades. So if I don't win, this isn't going to happen. And then that's when the mentality changed in my career. I think that now it's a must that I need to win.
Yeah, so actually psychologically maybe that did play to your advantage, because you knew there wasn't another option, you didn't have anything to fall back on, you had to make it work.
It definitely changed me, yeah.
Oh, that's really, really, really interesting. And then so what happened after the ranks of karting? Where did you go next?
We both went to the same stage, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. Went to Formula Renault, did a UK Championship primarily with a few European races, and that shift was very strange actually, to go from doing, as I say, 25, 30 weekends racing and karting a year to actually just a 10-round championship with fairly limited testing. Quite a culture shock actually, especially as that actually coincided pretty much with me leaving school at the end of my A-levels and then having a lot more time. So that's really the time in which it came a lot more professional for me, because I was then able to dedicate all of my time to racing, and I was exploring what other areas that I could do to improve my on-track performance when I was at home during the week. So that was a really interesting phase. And then went to Formula 3, did a bit of GP3, and then went off into sports cars and stayed there pretty much until I came back to Formula E.
And what was it like making the transition into sports cars?
That wasn't I wouldn't say too challenging. It was a bit of a different world, but the transition from, say, karting to cars was a far bigger transition than from single-seaters to GT cars. In the end, the GT car, it's obviously bigger, heavier, you've got a roof over your head and things, but fundamentally you're still kind of trying to do the same thing in the race car itself.
Do you remember that first drive in a Formula Renault really vividly?
Yes, I do. I remember I was at Albacete in Spain, cold mornings, and I can remember spinning, 7-8 times during the day and not having a clue why I'd spun, and it was a really interesting learning process to try and understand aerodynamics and weight transfer and suspension, and it was a whole new world.
Yeah, huge learning curve there. Was it the same for you, Alex?
It was, yeah. I followed a very similar trajectory into Formula Renault and into Formula 3 and GP3 and then GP2 and then so that was cool. I was lucky enough that I had a nice amount of success in the junior categories, and that sort of shaped my professional career very luckily actually.
And bringing it back to the Britishness, out of all of the races that you've managed to do in the UK, which would you say your favourite track was?
Silverstone for me. Actually, if we're talking purely British, Thruxton I think is my favourite circuit.
Yeah, okay. A lot of people love Thruxton, don't they?
I'd probably say Brands Hatch GP. I really, really enjoyed it. Brands Hatch Indy circuit is, I could take or leave it, but as soon as you add in the GP loop, it's pretty phenomenal, that place.
I love Brands Hatch. That was where I fell in love with racing, where I used to go.
Really? Oh, cool.
Well, it was about sort of 45 minutes. It was our sort of local proper track.
Yeah.
So that's where I always used to go to watch any form of racing, really. But brilliant. Okay, so now, before we run out of time, I am going to give you a quintessentially British fun quiz. You got for that?
Yeah, definitely.
Good. All right. So this is a bit of a quick round.
Are we against each other or taking it in turns?
You're going to take it in turns.
Got it.
So first question. Oh, we'll go this way, Alexander, and to Alex. It's a tough one. This one. Alexander, are you tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Interesting. Alex?
Coffee.
Okay. Well, that's not quintessentially British.
It's not, is it?
Sorry,
But I would agree with
tea,
you.
but I would probably go for coffee.
Okay. So how many cups of tea do you drink in a day?
Well, not many, as I generally go for coffee, but one or two.
Alex?
Are we? I mean, 4 or 5 coffees a day.
But how many teas?
0.
Zero. No tea. So a zero
Are
tea.
we talking just like English breakfast tea or herbal teas as well?
I mean,
Because actually, I do always have a lemon and ginger tea in the evening.
Well, I think as this is, a quintessentially British
That's
quiz, it should really be an
then
English breakfast tea.
unfortunately, like 0.15 or something. I'd say I have one. a week,
Okay, so you're rapidly becoming less British
Sorry,
if you're
yeah,
not drinking
yeah.
English breakfast tea at least 3 times during the course of the day.
Sorry.
Have either of you ever jumped a queue?
Ooh,
Because clearly, if you're British, you never jump a queue.
yeah, I probably have on occasion, but I feel very uncomfortable doing it. So by default, I would always queue.
It haunts you,
Yes.
Alex.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do not feel bad about it at all.
Well, you are racing drivers. I mean,
I
technically
know,
that is
I know,
your
it's
job to
terrible.
skip the queue and get
Yeah.
to the front.
Figured that might be your answer.
Have you ever had a bad haircut but pretend to love it?
Yes.
That
absolutely.
awkward moment in the hairdresser where you're like,
Yeah, I remember having
You've got one now.
mohawk. Having a mohawk or whatever it was called, where the guy styled it all into the middle.
ooh,
Maybe.
sexy.
No, I didn't have it shaved on the
Oh,
sides.
fine,
It was
okay,
all longish, but styled into the middle. I was like, whoa.
Something that you
Cheers,
do when
mate.
you were like a skater about
Yeah.
14
Walked
years
out
old.
and then put it straight back into a side party.
Alex, I can't imagine you having a bad haircut and not telling the hairdresser.
I remember a moment where it's like, if you pay for a cheap haircut, you're going to get a cheap haircut. But absolutely, I would always very struggle to complain. But that much I can't do.
So you now have expensive haircuts then?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
that's-
Not me.
Both sporting excellent haircuts, I've got to say.
Just say my wife will be very pleased that you were so complimentary of my latest haircut.
I
Did she
told
cut
Rachel
it?
that I was
She
only
does
taking the
quite
mickey.
Did your wife cut your hair?
Sometimes,
Oh, that's impressive. Oh, she can come round and do everyone's.
She's
Well,
qualified from
apparently
Nicky
not,
Clark.
if
Really?
No, I'm joking.
Right. I was like, oh, I'll definitely come over. Okay, when did you last discuss the weather? Because we love talking about the weather, don't we?
5 minutes ago. 10
I was
minutes
going to say, like 5 minutes before this interview started. Yes.
No, I think you were actually both moaning about it 30 seconds before this
Yeah,
interview
yeah.
started.
Well, yeah, him.
Yeah, I mean,
Alex changing his
outfit
shorts,
change.
Yeah.
Okay, if you aren't happy with a meal in a restaurant, would you complain or keep quiet and say, thank you so much, that was absolutely delicious?
No, I should say I generally try to give some feedback. It's not necessarily that honest, but I would try and give some indication that
You weren't pleased.
Alex
Yes.
is laughing and shaking his head, nodding his head.
No.
Sorry, is there been a
No, because
incident?
I remember that Simsy is that person that would just have to say something. You couldn't not. I feel like that's just a bit you in general.
Yeah, yes, in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's something to be said, you're gonna say it.
Yeah, but he'd
Good for you.
definitely go around the houses, but
Make it awkward.
indirectly
and-
say
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
I can't imagine you making anything awkward, Alexander.
Sorry.
I said I can't imagine you making anything awkward, Alexander.
I feel like there's a very hint of sarcasm there, Nicky.
I'm an awkward
So
guy.
Alex, if you weren't happy with the meal, would you complain? Or
I
keep
wouldn't,
quiet?
no.
You wouldn't complain?
No, I couldn't,
okay.
I couldn't complain.
Okay, so you're pretty British then, actually.
In that sense, for sure.
Have you ever apologised when it was the other person's fault? And I think we're talking
Yeah,
away
I'd
from
say
it.
always you go, oh, sorry, even if it's clearly, yes, yeah. that happens
We
frequently.
do, don't we?
It's the first word you need to learn if you're British, isn't
Yeah.
it?
So sorry.
I apologise.
Barbecue. Would you have it in the rain or just cancel it?
I don't have a barbecue,
If you were invited to a barbecue and it was raining, would you go or not attend?
Oh, yeah, I'd go still, yes, and still help cook, yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd go for sure.
Yeah, sure, of course. We love barbecues in the rain, why not? Just bring a brolly. Last question. Have you ever been stuck at a doorway with another person whilst you both insist that the other person goes through the door first? No, you. No, you. No, you. No, you.
Yes, frequently, yes. Yeah. And then you both go at the
And
same
then you
time.
headbutt. Very,
awkward, yes.
Of course.
I can relate to that.
Well, okay, so despite not being tea drinkers, I think it is official. You are clearly both very British.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, thank you so much for talking to us, and good luck in the London E-Prix, of course. How exciting! Home race, which you'll be doing for the first time for Formula E.
Correct.
Both of us.
Both of us.
Yeah, I was going to say, you weren't a passenger, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
For the first time. That was
Really, really cool to be racing in London. Mad.
And just a quick one, the track looks pretty awesome, inside, outside,
Have you seen
at the Excel Centre.
I've seen a very brief overview of it, and it looks pretty twisty. And
Where have you seen that?
I was in the, I don't know, Andrew's got a copy of it, either when we're in the simulator or something.
Oh, I see. We're sharing information in the teams.
I mean,
This is the moment that they fall
we
out for
only
the rest
did
of
a
the
general
weekend.
energy analysis,
No,
and the
yeah,
performance
yeah.
analysis. We
Yeah.
did a few runs on this. I mean, we didn't do much.
You've done all the shaping and
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, look, it looks cool. Partly inside, partly outside. I think there's some elevation change. Up and down is there. I remember watching Sam walk it, whatever it was, a year or two ago with an Autosport person. And yeah, it looks cool.
Great. Well, guys, good luck. Hopefully there will be lots of British fans supporting you throughout the weekend. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening or for watching this next episode of Straight Talk. We'll see you very soon.